I think we will get to marriage equality.
I personally believe that my sexuality is the essence of my being.
I always treat this virus as my best friend because after everyone will leave me, this is going to be with me forever.
My father was initially not ready to accept it.
Discovering your sexuality is really a process.
June 28, 1969. The Stonewall Riots broke out when the police raided the Stonewall Inn, a gay club in Greenwich Village in New York City. Until then, in the US, gay bars and clubs were safe havens for the LGBTQ community. At a time when expressing any kind of same-sex affection was illegal, these were places where people could socialize. But everything changed overnight. Police stormed the Stonewall Inn and started dragging employees and patrons out of the bar. In response, patrons of the Stonewall fought back. Though the crowd was dispersed, the next day more than 1,000 gay protesters from nearby areas assembled outside the Stonewall Inn. The riots lasted for 6 days. This was the first step towards an organized gay rights movement. This was the origin of Pride Month, celebrated in the month of June with colorful parades to mark the defining moment for LGBTQ Americans.
Trans lives matter! Trans lives matter! Trans women are women! Trans women are women! I want to break free!
Over the decades, the medical community reversed its opinion that homosexuals needed psychological treatment. In many countries, laws discriminating against gay and lesbian people slowly changed, and homosexuality was decriminalized. But the progress has been slow, and the fight for equality continues to this day. In 2020, organizers around the world were forced to cancel Pride-related events due to the coronavirus pandemic. New York's iconic Pride Parade was cancelled for the first time in its history due to travel restrictions and bans on large group gatherings. But that hasn't deterred the spirit of the LGBT+ community, and many events have gone online, making them accessible to all for the first time. In India, hospitality tycoon and gay rights activist Keshav Suri has been a leading voice for the LGBTQ movement. He was one of the 6 petitioners who sought and won the legal battle for decriminalizing homosexuality by partially striking down the colonial-era provisions of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code in 2018. In In the face of the coronavirus outbreak, his team is ensuring that the disadvantaged section of the transgender community, often ignored by welfare schemes, has enough food supplies and money to get by. The foundation has also started a mental health support helpline that provides free counseling as well as an online series of interactions called Queering Quarantine.
Can't you hear a voice inside that's calling out your
Keshav says his partner and the love of his life, Cyril Philibbois, supports him every step of the way. The couple tied the knot in the summer of 2018.
We did it in Paris. It was an exceedingly small ceremony, just my mom, my three sisters, Cyril's parents, his brother, sister-in-law and nieces, and it was in the town hall where we had the official signing, and then we had a little reception on the Seine on the boat where we celebrated that night. And of course, later in the year, this was of course in June, then we got the decriminalization. Then later in the year, we did a sort of a queer version of a big fat desi wedding, but I wouldn't even call it that because that just sounds so that sounds so so wrong. He was there throughout. I mean, from the time I filed my writ petition. In fact, he was the reason why I filed my writ petition, because we always used to have arguments about India versus France and where we are in terms of rights. And he finally said one day to me, "What have you done about it? Okay, you're talking so much about it, that you're decriminalizing this and the other than having a nightclub or hiring people from the community, what else have you done? Have you really done anything in terms of thing?" That's what really pushed me to actually filing my writ. He actually checked me and my privilege. And it's the reason why I even filed my writ and we got to where we were was because of him. So yeah, he was there throughout. I mean, we've been together for 12 years.
The Supreme Court's historic verdict, decriminalizing homosexuality, has now paved the way for same-sex couples to legally cohabit and conduct their personal affairs without fear of persecution. It opened the doors for several changes to be introduced to marriage, adoption, and inheritance laws for same-sex couples. However, it does not automatically translate into a seamless transition to equality for the LGBT+ community. Keshav hopes that the tide will change soon.
I think we will get to marriage equality. I'm hoping faster than the rest of the world. I'm hoping that it doesn't take as long as it did for the rest of the world from decriminalization to marriage equality. There are two things. There is one of on-paper rights, and then there is also societal acceptance. And there is the mainstreaming of those rights. And I think that that's changing quite quickly after the decriminalization. You saw how there were Netflix shows and Bollywood and movies like Ek Ladki Ko Dekha To Aisa Laga and Shubh Mangal and Made in Heaven. And they all happened to come after the decriminalization. And I think slowly but surely, we're getting to that point of marital acceptance. And I think, I can't give you a timeline, but I'm hoping it's soon, and I have a lot of hope in that.
From opening a gay-friendly bar in India's capital to popularizing the drag queen culture, Keshav is shining a spotlight on normalizing homosexuality. Fearless, impulsive, non-conformist, and fighting for the freedom of the sexually marginalized. Meet the second petitioner of Section 377 decriminalization, celebrity chef Ritu Dalmia. Wearing her sexuality on her sleeve like a boss, food entrepreneur and the owner of a string of restaurants, Ritu came out at the age of 23. But she was fortunate to have an understanding set of parents.
I think it's not about conservative, non-conservative. Yes, my family is very conservative. My parents, my father was very conservative. But when I told my mother, which was quite early on after I discovered my sexuality, she was very quiet for a day or two. And after that, I think she accepted it because for her, I think at the end of the day, what really was important was my happiness. So there was no screaming, shouting matches, no trying to get married, no taking me to pundits to get myself cured. It was just plain and simple. This is how it is. This is her lifestyle choice, and we support it. So I have to admit I'm one of the very few lucky ones who really am blessed and grateful for the support I got from my family.
With the support of her family and the conviction of being true to herself, Ritu finally managed to file a petition against Article 377 in June 2016. Along with other petitioners like Keshav Suri, Navtesh Singh Johar, Sunil Mehra, Aman Nath, and Ayesha Kapoor. She attended all the hearings of the Navtesh Singh Johar versus Union of India case, but wasn't in the country on the historic day.
For me, my first reaction was complete disbelief. Because when I filed this petition, I mean, of course, it changed when we went to court and we could see what the reaction of the judges were. But when I filed this case, I didn't think in my lifetime this case will ever come through or see the light of the day. It was complete disbelief. And later I broke down. I just broke down and cried like a baby by myself, sitting by myself, because I just didn't know how to react to it. For me, I did it not knowing what the result will be. It took me a lot of effort, courage to do this step, and then to see what a beautiful result that came out of it. It was complete disbelief. And now when I look back, honestly, it's really one of very few things in my life that I'm very, very proud of.
Being a public figure, Ritu's life after filing the petition was out in the open. While many lauded her for courage, others trolled her for being gay, something that she's learned to shrug off.
With the filing of the case, I had to make my private life public, which was not so easy, not so good. A lot of trolling, a lot of dirty tweets, a lot of around. But at the end, the result was very, very well worth it.
Like Keshav, Ritu too believes that closets are for clothes, not homosexuality, and the stigma needs to be smashed.
LGBTQ has always existed in our society in some form or the other for centuries now. For centuries, you go to your scriptures, you go to your temples, you go to your mythology. There's always been there. What happened over the years, especially during the Victorian era, the English era, that somewhere that got sidelined, and the English or the Catholic rules became applicable in India. So technically speaking, there should be no stigma. But what's happened today is basically a lack of education, right from school level, home levels, and that's really what adds to the stigma. What people need to know is, hang on, there's no difference between a heterosexual or a homosexual person.
In Goa currently, Ritu has no plans to celebrate the Pride Month, because this diva with a difference believes in celebrating every single day of her life with pride. It is estimated that globally, 37.9 million people are living with HIV/AIDS. But only around 78% of them know they have the virus. Gay and bisexual men, as well as transgender people, have been hit especially hard by the pandemic.
I always treat this virus as my best friend, because after everyone will leave me, this is going to be with me forever until I will leave this world.
30-year-old Gautam Yadav, an out and proud gay man, contracted HIV too when he was only 18.
I had to come out twice in my life. First as a gay person, and then in 2008 in 2009 as a HIV positive person. So then it was a bit difficult. So I took help of my sister, and then when she spoke to my father over the phone, and my father's first reaction was that this happened because of sex.
Not only did he overcome a feeling of hopelessness, but he also went on to become a youth icon for the young LGBTQ and HIV positive community from India.
The doctor was asking me a few questions, and then he asked me that, Gautam, why are you here for the HIV testing, and what will you do if your result is positive? So I very nicely and calmly said that. So I told him that I will be continuing all my work, and then I will also work for my LGBT community. And after a pause, there was a reply from the doctor, and he said that, Gautam, your result is positive. Mostly the thing which happened, now no one can change that. So it's better to think about the future, like how I can live a positive life, how I can go into the better treatment, how I can keep myself positive, So all these things which we need to worry about or think about. And to be very frank, I feel that living with HIV, at least for me, I don't see any challenge, because I somehow feel that diabetes is more difficult than HIV, So because my parents are living with diabetes, and I see how they take care of themselves. They have to eat in certain way, they have to take medicines, they do all these things. But in HIV, I don't need to think about all these things. I just need to take one pill a day, and that's it.
Gautam's family stood by him in his darkest times. His father, an auto rickshaw driver, and mother, a homemaker, are his pillars of support.
I always feel fortunate enough that even being not literate, they handled this situation so well. They never out think we do some celebration or something. But yeah, if I wanted to do anything, they never stopped me, and that is their celebration.
He has been a leading voice of Humsuffer Trust, an NGO that promotes LGBT rights and has been touring the world to raise awareness about living with HIV. But he says his heart belongs to India, and he has good reason to stay here.
I said to myself that, Gautam, if everyone is going to leave the country for their betterment, then who is going to work for the country's betterment? That was my question to myself only.
I am a homosexual man.
A survivor, a fighter, a dedicated supporter of animal protection charities, an equal rights activist, Harish Iyer is a force to be reckoned with. He is also a survivor of child sexual abuse.
My childhood was clouded by thoughts of trying to rescue myself, because I was abused as a child. I was 7 years of age, and at 7 I was sexually abused by a male relative. And by the time I lived in these two parallel worlds, the world that I was getting sexually abused and the world that I was not getting sexually abused. And I didn't want these two worlds to meet. And children, young children have this innate ability to remember when they want to remember and forget when they want to forget. So I lived in these two parallel worlds where when I was with my abuser, I was afraid. I was completely... I didn't know how to rescue myself. But the moment I was out of him, I even could completely shut it and not remember that at all. So I lived in these two parallel worlds, and this was not an abuse that happened once with me. It used to happen every fortnight. I used to get sexually abused. By the time I was 11 or 12, I remember my abuser got other people home, and I was gang raped by the age of 11 or 12. And I remember this. I remember my childhood where I would try and explain. Even when you don't want to, you don't remember things. There are these tiny moments where you get flashes of what's happening with you, even when that's not happening with you. That's how nightmares happen. And I remember trying to discuss this with my mother, trying to tell my mother that my uncle touches me here and there and I don't like it. And my mother said, okay, don't go close to your uncle. The second time when I tried telling her that I'm bleeding from my private parts, she said, oh, that's because you're eating too many mangoes. The thought that a male child could get sexually abused didn't exist. There is hardly anyone who knew that a male child could get sexually abused.
The abuse went on and on. Harish was raped for 11 years as a child and then a teenager, but he found solace and acceptance from an unlikely quarter.
I remember when I was trying to look for help at that time, trying to look for another story, and this is the pre-internet boom that happened in India. When I was trying to look at stories, when I was trying to scan through television channels and try to speak to people and see if there is somebody like me, a single soul like me, who is a survivor of child sex abuse and who is male, I didn't find any. And that's when, with a little support of counseling at that time, because counseling was very tabooed, I got counseling from my dog. I used to put my head between his paws and start crying. And every time he licked my tears, it gave me more courage to stand up for myself and to stand up for beings like him. So his name was Jimmy, and just so that I had Jimmy in my life, and I used to speak to Jimmy, and Jimmy became that confidant that I never had, who could listen to me without judging me, who could love me without wanting to understand me. Became an epitome, became the reason why I'm living today.
Are some people born gay? Is it genetic or can it be shaped by our experiences? Can we make active choices about who we are sexually attracted to?
It is not the consequence of anything. And irrespective, now, do we ever go and ask a woman who has been touched, molested in her life, did she turn heterosexual because she was molested? So I don't think that I need to have a rhyme or a reason to confirm to my sexuality. I am happy being this way. If I was not happy being this way, then I would have tried to discover who really I am. And I remember having told my story in college in a very dramatic event where I was on stage and people were bullying me and people were saying all sorts of things. And I had the mic in my hand and I said that I was 7 when I was sexually abused, and at 7 I really enjoyed it. And I said it in a sarcastic tone. I said it with my eyes clouded with tears. My eyes were red, bloodshot at that time. And I burst out crying after saying that. And the same crowd that was bullying me 10 minutes before stood up and gave me a standing ovation. And today, after many years, I am an out and proud gay professor in the same college. And I am the co-founder of an organization that is called the Jimmy Foundation.
His heart-wrenching story tells you what many children who fall prey to predators go through. According to the National Crime Records Bureau of India, 109 children are sexually abused every day in the country. More than 40% of them are male. His life has inspired 2 films, including director Owner's Iyer, in which actor Sanjay Suri plays Abhimanyu, a child sexual abuse survivor, a character based on Harish. Today, Harish is one of the most recognized faces of the LGBTQ movement in India. His family welcomed him back in the fold 20 years ago. In 2015, his mother, Padma Iyer, even placed the first gay matrimonial ad in the country, in which she said she is looking for a groom for her son. Another parent who held his head high when his daughter made India proud Nitasha Biswas' father couldn't have been happier when she won the first ever transgender beauty contest in India in 2017. And went on to represent India at the Miss International Trans Queen in Thailand.
At a very young age that, I always knew that I had to change. People are talking about lockdown, people are irritated with the lockdown, quarantine. I have lived a life about lockdown where I was trapped in the soul of the wrong body. The soul was in the wrong body, but I had to change, and that is exactly what I have done.
Born a boy, Nitasha realized early on that she was a woman trapped inside a man's body. After years of trying to find her true identity, she decided to undergo a tough sexual reassignment surgery.
Nobody wants to undergo surgeries, right? Surgeries are painful. We have so much of, injections, syringes, and pain after the surgery. But then, this is a kind of how the World Health Organization has declared that gender dysphoria was no more a mental disorder. It was a sexual health problem like any other man or woman might have. So after that was declared, but then I have transitioned way before that. So, things were a little tough for that time, but then it was not impossible. So I have, gone to the psychologist. I went for my rigorous psychologist who was, she was amazing. She has guided me throughout, so nice, and helped me as well. And after that, I had my doctors who had helped me undergo the surgery. So, without a psychologist and psychiatrist evaluation, that depends however long that they want to take it, because transition is nothing to do with, it's not about just a surgery, it's about your mind, it's about, fitting your mind in a new box of new emotions.
Nitasha has been transitioning for many years now. She is also undergoing a hormone replacement therapy to change her masculine appearance. For this queen, it was a decision worth taking.
A trans woman walking on the road is just another woman walking on the road. There's no category as or tagged or labeled. Woman is a woman.
Despite the challenges they faced, all the voices of pride we spoke with exuded positivity. They are optimistic about life and love, and they've learned to celebrate their own selves. We say more power to them.
Do not hide, come out with dignity and pride, loud and proud.
The Q in LGBTQ stands for queer. It also stands for questioning. So even if you're questioning your sexuality, that is a valid state. That is an authentic state to be in.
I think every woman out there is a diva in some form or the other, and each one is there with a little bit of difference, and that's what really makes them what they are and gives them their individuality.
A very good Pride Month full of love, joy, happiness, and health.